When the Golden State Warriors won the championship in 2022, securing their fourth title in 8 years, the franchise was on cloud nine, as most believed the Warriors were done and wouldn't be winning another championship under Steph Curry. This especially being the case after Kevin Durant left the team in 2019. Even going into the playoffs that season in 2022, no one really thought the Warriors were going to walk away with the titles, as most expected it would be either the Phoenix Suns or the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. But despite beating the odds and their core three guys now being on the wrong side of 30, the Warriors still proved to the league they weren't done, and they were going to continue competing for titles as long as they still had the greatest shooter of all time playing at a high level. But since that championship, the Warriors haven't finished the regular season with a top 5 seed in the West, winning just one playoff series and missing the playoffs entirely last season. And now, despite a strong start to this year's regular season, the Warriors now face a real world where they could miss not just the playoffs, but the play-in entirely. And while you would think there would be some sense of urgency on the part of Mike Dunleavy and the Warriors front office to do whatever they could to try and better this team and go for one last push to win a championship while they still have their superstar and franchise player in Steph Curry, the Warriors somehow seem to be okay with just being mid, making small trades here on the margins that aren't really doing much of anything, like landing Dennis Schroeder. But what's been the biggest surprise to me is just how seemingly okay Steph Curry has been with all of this. What do I mean by that exactly? Well, let's talk about it. Be sure to subscribe if you like this type of content. In return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, I always see Warriors fans on Twitter, Reddit, or even in the comments of some of my videos saying, never rule out the Warriors. As long as they have Steph playing at a high level, they are a threat. And I think a lot of Warriors fans felt emboldened to think that way because everyone pretty much counted the Warriors out and they would never win a championship again after they lost KD and Klay Thompson started getting season-ending injuries. So when the Warriors won it all again in 2022 without Kevin Durant, you then had the Dubs fans saying, see, I told you so. But at the time of this recording anyway, the Warriors are sitting below 500 for the first time this season. They're coming off a terrible loss to a 9-win team in the Toronto Raptors and now find themselves 12th in the Western Conference standings on the outside looking into the play-in. And yes, I know the West standings are super tight when you look at seeds 3 through 12. And yes, the Warriors, as they stand, are only 2.5 games back of the 6th seed. But at the end of the day, regardless of where the Warriors finish, as currently constructed, they're a first-round exit at best. Even Warriors fans know this, and it's why you're not seeing the same type of confidence with that fan base in saying never count their team out. And while there are still some fans that are optimistic that the Warriors can turn this thing around, either by making a big trade or some of their younger players coming to life and breaking out like Podziemski or Kuminga, somehow turning into stars that they need them to be, the problem is the Warriors aren't really as desperate as some of the fans are wanting them to be in bringing this franchise back to contention. And oddly enough, their players feel the same way. Specifically Draymond Green and yes, even Steph Curry. Draymond over the offseason said the team brought forth a big trade that would position them to better win now, but really give up a lot of their future, which Draymond himself said he advised the front office to not make that move because it would be mortgaging too much of the team's future. What the trade was, we'll never know, but my guess is what was widely speculated, the Lauri Markkanen deal where the Jazz wanted an insane amount of picks to get him, which honestly was probably the right call for the Warriors to not go all in on Markkanen. And that especially looked to be the case when the Warriors started off the season a top team in the Western Conference and looked just fine without shipping all their future assets off for Markkanen, until the Warriors started losing. Their offense started falling off. So then everyone started asking the question, okay, well, clearly the Warriors are going to try to make an all-in move for another title push, right? Like, they're not just going to sit on their hands and be okay being mediocre. That's not how this franchise operates, especially when they have one of the biggest names in the league. Well, not really. And even despite the struggles, you have Draymond doubling down on what he said during the offseason with a specific quote first shared by Vince Goodwill, where he said, "The beautiful part about being in this space that we're in is in Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and myself all disagree with mortgaging the future of this organization, saying that we're going for it right now. Bad teams do that. Bad organizations do that. We're neither one." Which, to be fair, he's not wrong. You look at some of these teams that went all in, risk their entire future to try win a championship, and it hasn't really gotten the team anywhere. I look at teams like the Suns or even the Timberwolves with the amount of draft capital they gave up to get Rudy Gobert. The Atlanta Hawks made an all-in move to get DeJounte Murray and then trade him 2 years later. However, if you're in a position like the Warriors are in, where you're a mid-team, not a championship contender, you've got one of the highest payrolls in the league over the luxury tax, then what are we doing here? If I'm owner Joe Lacob and paying all this money on the payroll and getting a pretty hefty tax bill, I'm selling off most of my valuable assets and starting fresh, going down to rebuild. Like if even your coach, Curry and Draymond are in agreement, like, hey, yeah, it's not worth it to just throw away your future to try and win now with us, then what's the point of keeping this core together when they've probably hit their ceiling? Podziemski, Kuminga, Moody, they're not developing in the way the franchise maybe thought. Not that they're bad players by any means, but it's pretty clear these aren't going to be future franchise-level players. But they are players that you can potentially build with as part of a new future roster iteration, and if you truly want to develop them for the future, you can't at the same time be in a position where you're trying to win now with veteran players while also developing this young core. And that's especially the case if you're trying to win, but in fact not actually being competitive. Now, do I think the Warriors would ever do this? Maybe they would trade Draymond if a team was willing to take on the headache that is him and the contract that comes with it, but unless Steph Curry requests a trade, they're not going to move their cash cow, their franchise player that has been with this team his entire career, even if they aren't playing well. But something that really surprised me was what Steph said after a Warriors close loss to the Raptors in Toronto. Take a listen.
What are you referring to?
Desperate trades or desperate, moves that deplete the future. Like, there is a responsibility on allowing or keeping the franchise when it, in a good space and good spot when it comes to where we leave this thing when we're done. You want to continue to get better. Nobody wants to be stale or be in a situation where you're passing up opportunities, but it doesn't mean that you're desperate, just flinging assets all around the place just because you want to do something. While, we understand we're getting older and deeper into our careers and allowing some of the young guys to kind of blossom. But it doesn't mean you're getting desperate.
Now again, just like with some of the things Draymond had said, he's not wrong in this notion that desperate trades, all-in type moves that mortgage your future are usually not the best paths or forms to putting together long, sustained success of a franchise. And it's a front office's job to ensure they're setting up their franchise for success for the long haul as well as in the short term. But you would expect that type of message to come from the front office, not from your franchise player who knows his time playing professional basketball is coming to an end, and that his window to win another championship is closing. You look at a guy like LeBron over the past few seasons who has been pushing the Lakers to do everything possible to get them another title. Yes, even risking their futures to do so. Making bad trades that haven't gotten them anywhere, like trading D'Angelo Russell, then flipping D'Angelo Russell for Dorian Finney-Smith, which hasn't really done much of anything for them as of late. You would think Steph would kind of be on the same page. Like, hey guys, our team isn't very good. I'm 36, about to be 37, and I want to be in a position to win. But Steph just seems oddly okay with how things stand. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure he wants the team to get better. I'm sure he wants them to make moves to make the roster better. But like he said, he doesn't agree that shipping out all their assets to try and win now makes sense for the future of this franchise, especially once he's gone. And look, Steph has more recently been vocal about the fact that he knows his retirement is near, how he knows eventually he's going to leave this game. But with his comments from that interview, his tone, his demeanor, it seems like Steph's retirement might actually be closer than we think. For some guys, they don't want to play until the wheels fall off. Financially, they're set for life. It's a grueling 82-game season, and you get to a point in your career where you're okay with your legacy and accolades, success, and you just kind of coast. And I'm wondering if Steph is maybe starting to get in that mindset, and maybe knowing he's going to be hanging it up sooner than expected, and doesn't want to set the franchise that he built backwards. Maybe it's possible he's already notified the front office of his intentions, and it's why they haven't been moving with a sense of urgency like any other team would if they were in the Warriors' position. I see a lot of people saying Steph just needs to ask out. He needs to demand a trade because he's the only good player on this roster, and they're not going anywhere, which I agree would make the most sense, especially for the Warriors, as they likely could get quite a haul for Steph Curry. But Steph just doesn't seem like that type of guy, and more so the type of player who wants to ride this out with the only franchise he's ever played for. The man has won 4 championships, is the greatest shooter of all time, and changed the game of basketball. He already established his legacy. He doesn't really have much else to prove, and maybe that's why he's more or less accepted where the Warriors are at right now. Although who knows, watch the Warriors will now make a blockbuster trade and take everything away that I just said. I would love to hear what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.